Hi and welcome back to I Bloody Love Orange. I'm Josh.
And I'm Jess, and this is our true crime podcast.
Yay! We're
Yay.
back.
We're back.
You
We're back again.
You had a nice day.
Yeah, well, it's 10 to 9 in the morning. So,
Oh, lush.
the
Nice.
day hasn't happened yet. Have you had a nice day?
I have. It's really hot today, so I haven't been out. And today is the day where Jun's at work and I'm at home.
Yeah.
Which means I don't go jogging, I don't really go outside, I don't do anything, I just stay in and I binge, whatever I'm watching throughout the day. Or I started the day prepping for my crime.
Yeah.
And while prepping for the crime, I did a lot of prep. Like, I usually do a lot, but today I'll tell you later, but I've really been detailed. So when I finished prepping, I needed something to, take the edge off a bit, because, when you read too much about crime and you just...
Yeah, you're just, in the slump.
Yeah, I was, looking out the window and binoculars in case someone's going to, snipe me from somewhere.
My dad gave me some binoculars the other day.
Yeah, and I need them, because I was so paranoid.
You said that I needed them for, bird watching now that I work for, a bird charity. And I was like,
that's
it's not really what my job is.
I would like a job in bird watching. I think I would appreciate that.
I would love that.
Yeah, so anyway, I go down into the slumps as usual. I'm digging through the crime, and then I get to the end of the crime, and the end is where someone's died or something. So it's it's always sad. And so anyway, I was like, right, I'll get on YouTube and I'll try and find something to binge. And stumbled across the TLC show 90 Day Fiancé. Have you heard of it? What a blessing. I felt truly kissed by an angel watching that show. I was following some of the famous ones, some of the not so famous couples, and just to perk myself up, I wasn't following any of the couples that looked like they were going to match, or that had the
Oh yeah, I know.
The news was positive about them. I didn't do that. Right. Today, instead, I was like, do you know what I'll do? I'll watch the ones that are, really terrible, or kind of, a bit embarrassing, a bit funny. Oh, blessing. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen. If you haven't watched 90 Day Fiancé, I highly recommend. There's some playlists on YouTube you can go and watch. Oh, it was the guy with no neck. I absolutely love him. I love the girl that agrees to touch this man, to hold his hand and to, kiss him. Love her. You get your visa, girl, if you're willing to go that far.
True, exactly. That's what I think. If these women can actually touch these men, they deserve a visa.
At one point, they have this argument about toothpaste, because he gives her toothpaste as a present, which is just disgusting. Yeah. Don't give me toothpaste and a toothbrush. My dental hygiene's fine.
So offended if someone did that.
Mortified. So she's walking off, and he says to her, okay, he's got this really nasally voice, worse than mine, which is saying something. And he says to her, I love you. And she says something in Tagalog really beautifully, twice. And he turns to the cameraman and he's like, I hope that means love you. And the subtitle just says, you're ugly. You're ugly.
I've seen that bit. You're ugly. I mean, he is. If you haven't seen pictures of Big Ed, just go and look at that with no context.
It's a blessing,
It's something. It's something. I'm going to watch it later. You've turned me on to it.
Please.
I'm going to watch it.
Also, there's another one, Usman. He's from Africa. He's from Nigeria, and his lady friend Lisa. And all of the videos that TLC quote her on, they don't call her Lisa because he calls her Baby Love. So all of the TLC captions and titles are like, Baby Love got to Uganda. And just her going around, bless this woman. I mean, she's a total idiot for thinking, this is a realistic thing to do.
Yeah.
She flies across the earth to go and meet this man, and it is the funniest thing. And I think it turns out that he had some side chick that he's dating the whole time, but
side chick. I think Lisa is the side chick.
He's saying to everyone, Baby Love, don't disrespect Baby Love, she's the best. He's even saying to her flat out, saying to his family, I just want to go to America. I just want to work there. I just want to get a better job. And she's just sits there completely fine.
I don't know though. These people might genuinely be that desperate that it borders on a mental illness.
I think so. I think there's some sort of desperation. But when she calls him Baby Love, she uses his African accent to say it, which just solidifies in my mind how TLC.
Oh my
Like, where did you
gosh.
find these people?
I
Amazing.
need to see it.
Amazing. No, it really is something. It's really built me up today. Yeah,
I'm gonna watch
that's
it. I'm gonna
great.
watch it later in bed.
Yeah, please do. I today to prep for this because hang on, who's first today? Is it you or me?
Me. I think I'm first today.
Okay, so I'll let you go first then because I have just let you know if you don't stay for the second half of this podcast, more for you because I have a case. Since we started this podcast,
honestly, guys,
this case has been in the back of my head.
Josh has been bigging up this case to me all night. He's been like, "Oh, my case, girl. Oh, oh, oh." That was the text I got, and I was just like, "Okay, he's done it. He's got a good one."
Honestly, baby love, this is the case. It's a case that I wanted to do because I can't. No part of me can have a true crime podcast with a friend and not talk about this case, even though it's super famous. Everyone's gonna know about it. So, and that's why
I think I know what it is. You haven't told me like before this or anything, but I've got this feeling that I know what it is. From you saying that, I'm like, no.
Can you tell me?
No. I'm gonna wait and see if it is.
Oh, okay. I don't think you will know because this case, we have gone into this case before. Sorry, I'm bigging this up so much, but baby love, I'm so into it. It's yeah. Anyway, catch up with me later. Catch up with me after the break, I'll fill you in. Okay.
He's not going anywhere. He's gonna listen to my case first. You know.
Yeah, I can't wait.
He's just excited for his.
Yeah, can't wait.
Okay, so I got the pod cough again. It's
Always.
my signature. It's my signature.
Always.
So my case today, let's get into it. My case is the Parker Holm murder case. Do you know about that?
I don't. Not from that like name. No.
Right. Okay. So this is a weird case, and it gets pretty brutal. Okay.
Okay.
So here goes. Right. Pauline Yvonne Parker, aka Pauline Reaper. Right, that's like that's the name. Reaper is the name that she was known by when all this happened.
Okay.
Was born on the 26th of May, 1938. So it's a long time ago. She met Juliet Holm, who was born in London, when they were both in their early teens. Parker came from a working class background, while Holm, who arrived with her parents in New Zealand in 1948, was the daughter of Henry Holm, a physicist who was the rector of University of Canterbury in Christchurch. So, you know, one comes from a poor family, one comes from a very educated, rich family. Okay. In the 1940s as well, so a big class system going on.
A big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They both attended Christchurch Girls' High School, then located in what became the Crammer Centre. Both girls had a debilitating illness as a child. Parker had
Did you almost say as a child?
As a child. I almost said as a children. Because I'm like reading it out different to how I've written it here, because I've written it as writing and then I'm reading it as like conversation.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Anyway, so basically they both almost died as kids. And they bonded over it. They both had like different diseases when they were kids. One had TB, one had something that I can't say, and then they bonded over it.
Oh my god, please try and say it.
It's called osteomyelitis.
Oh, okay. You didn't butcher that as bad as I thought you were going to.
Yeah, well, you can't see the spelling, so that might have been butchered.
Okay.
Okay, so according to Parker's accounts, or Reaper, whatever you want to call her, she and Holm both romanticized the idea of being sick. So they were obviously a bit crazy is the right word?
I don't know.
Yeah, a bit kook. The girls first met at Christ. Oh my god. Do you know what? Should we just stop mine now?
It's funny because when we start, well, before the podcast and after the podcast, you're completely fine, but during the podcast, you're a mess.
I know. It's because I'm trying to read and like converse at the same time. It just don't happen.
You do you.
My brain just doesn't work that way. Anyway, so they met at Christchurch Girls' High School, where they initially bonded. Oh god. Have I already written this bit?
Get it together, woman.
Just for a bit of background, everyone. I have not been well this week. And my brain has been a bit all over the place. And I've mostly been in bed. So there's that.
No, that's totally fine.
So that's a bit of background on why I am being such a blithering idiot right now. Okay.
That's okay. We've got the story so far. 2 girls, one rich, one poor. They meet and they're both like being ill.
Yeah.
It's basically us.
When they were kids, yeah. So they bonded over their like medical conditions. Later, as their friendship developed, they formed a more elaborate fantasy life together. They wrote plays, books, and stories centered in this world. They became nearly obsessed with one another, with Juliet in particular becoming withdrawn and ill when Pauline would leave, like, her house. Which, like,
relate.
It's me and you. This is what drew it to me. This is why I picked this case, because I read that and I was like, oh my god, that's us. That's literally us.
Yeah.
Oh my god. It's not good. We didn't, like, I'm going to disclaimer there, like, even though this is very similar to us, we did not have any ideas that they had into this story, okay?
Okay.
Pauline's parents in particular became very concerned that the girls were becoming too close and that their relationship might be sexual. Ooh, the S word. Homosexuality at the time was considered a serious mental illness. So remember, this is like the late 40s, early 50s. And I never ever use time as an excuse. I don't like when people are like, oh, it was a different time. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit what time it is. Everyone has morals, okay?
Yeah, we should know better.
But at the same time, that's the basic, like, you know, census that...
premise.
Yeah, It was a mental illness in those days, which is ridiculous. The Holmes also had concerns. But both families continued to allow the girls to see one another, and Pauline was accepted at the Holm home for overnights and vacations. So kind of been like... Nice. I think they were the kind of parents that were like... not accepting in a way, because at the time... but at the same time, they were like, I'd rather not see my daughter be ill and depressed. I would rather just let her be a lesbian. You know?
Fair.
I think that's what was going on. The exception to this was over the summer holidays in 1953, Pauline was not invited to go as she had been in previous years, which is weird. During their friendship, the girls invented their own personal religion with their own ideas on morality. They rejected Christianity and worshipped their own saints, envisioning a parallel dimension called the Fourth World. Essentially their version of heaven. Heaven. Jesus Christ. The Fourth World was a place that they felt they were already able to enter occasionally during moments of spiritual enlightenment. By Parker's account, they'd achieved this spiritual enlightenment because of their friendship. Eventually, the girls formulated a plan to flee to America. So I think their parents started to try and separate them a bit, and they had like made this whole religion, which they'd like deluded themselves with, that they were like above everyone else, and then they made a plan that they were going to go to America together to get away from their parents.
Okay.
But in 1954, Holmes' parents separated. Problems with the faculty and the board forced her father to resign from his position in Canterbury University College, and her mother was carrying on an affair, so it was a very dodgy breakup. The family planned to return to England, but it was decided that Juliet would be sent to live with relatives in South Africa for her health, apparently, which I think was really weird. Both girls were heartbroken over their upcoming separation and decided that Pauline should go to South Africa as well. Although the Holmes seemed okay with the idea, they were unlikely to allow it to happen. Pauline was sure her mother would not allow her to go with Juliet. The girls then formed a plan to murder Pauline's mother in order to remove that one obstacle of them remaining together. Their long-term plan was to go to South Africa and then head to Hollywood or New York City, where they believed they'd be able to publish their writing and their work in film.
Oh, okay. After murdering someone?
Yeah,
you'd be insane.
They thought they needed to murder her mum so that they like had no obstacle anymore and could go. So, if this next bit is I've managed to get a very detailed account of the
Ooh.
actual murder. So,
Ooh.
if
Okay.
you if you're skittish or if you're squeamish, I would skip. I would skip ahead
Skip forward.
about 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
So get rid
Ooh,
of
take us
this.
to church.
I know. On the 22nd of June, 1954, the body of Honora Reaper, which is her mum, was discovered in Victoria Park in Christchurch, New Zealand. That afternoon, Honora had gone for a walk through Victoria Park with her daughter Pauline and Pauline's best friend Juliet. Approximately 130 metres down the path in a wooded area near a small wooden bridge, Holm and Parker bludgeoned her to death with half a brick enclosed in an old stocking.
Whoa, brutal.
So here's the detailed account of the day, as described by an author called Peter Graham, who spent years travelling across the world, back and forth, to research this case. This is from his book.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not going to read all of it because it's really long, but I'm going to pick out parts that I think are interesting. So on the morning of the 22nd of June at 10:30, Juliet collected half a brick from a pile next to the garage in her home.
Okay.
She was then driven to Christchurch City to do some personal shopping by her mother. And her mum described Juliet as happy, calm, and affectionate that morning.
Okay.
At 11 a.m., Juliet arrived at Pauline Parker's house. Both girls made small talk with Honora, her mum, before making their way up to Pauline's room. There they placed half a brick into a stocking and knotted it. Pauline placed this into her school shoulder bag. Juliet had brought a small pink stone, like a gem, that she had removed from a brooch. Okay?
Okay.
So
Why?
remember that. You'll need it later.
Oh, okay.
At 12 p.m, Pauline's father and her sister Wendy arrived back home for lunch. Juliet and Pauline joined them. This was reportedly a happy affair with laughing jokes and warmth between the family.
Nice.
At 1:30, Honora Parker left with Pauline and Juliet on a bus to Victoria Park in Kashmir Hills. At 2:35 p.m, the trio arrived in Victoria Park terminus and exited the bus. Honora was feeling a little thirsty. It says parched. She decided to go to the nearby tea kiosk. Inside, she ordered a pot of tea and the girls ordered soft drinks. They were served by Agnes Ritchie, the manager of the kiosk. Agnes stated later that she chatted with Honora for a bit and the girls behaved accordingly when she addressed them, and she concluded that she had thought they were a quiet group.
Okay.
At 3:05...
Normal.
Yep, 3:05 p.m, Honora, Pauline and Juliet all left the tea kiosk. They entered Victoria Park through a gap in a stone wall and set off along the steep path. The East Side Bush Track, as it was known.
Okay.
So, at 3:20, about 130 metres down the path, they came to a small wooden bridge. Juliet took the lead. Honora followed, with Pauline just behind. Juliet got far enough ahead to initiate the plan. She dropped the pink gemstone on the ground. Then she called for Honora and Pauline to come and see what she found. Honora leant down to look at the stone. Pauline removed the brick from the stocking from her shoulder bag. Pauline, coming from behind, swung the brick as hard as she could at her mother's skull. Nora yelled and instinctively covered her head with her hands. She was now fighting for her life. Pauline bashed away mercilessly, but her mother was slow to go down. She and Juliet forced her to the ground. Juliet grabbed the loaded stocking from Pauline and landed further furious blows on Nora's head. Blood was spraying everywhere. Her resistance was weakening. The stocking broke. Nora was now lying face upwards, making a terrible noise. Juliet kneeled, gripped her around the throat, and held her head against the ground with Pauline. Grasping the half a brick with her hand, hammered her again and again and again, on the forehead, the temples, wherever she could land a blow. Nora writhed and twisted and then twitched convulsively. They tried to drag her to a place where they could roll her down a bank, but she was already a dead weight. It was all they could do was to shift her a few feet, and she was gurgling blood as they left.
Oh my god, that's awful. That's terrible.
Isn't that brutal? Absolutely brutal. So at 3:30, Pauline and Juliet arrived back at the tea kiosk with blood-soaked clothing. white-faced and hysterical. Juliet had a lot of blood on her hands, with a fine mist of blood on her face, but Pauline had an abundance of blood on her face and hands. Her left hand was just covered in gore, which is gross. Pauline panicked, managing to blurt out, "Please, could somebody help us? Mummy's been hurt. It's Mummy. She's terribly hurt. She's dead." Juliet added, "It's her mother. She's hurt. She's covered with blood. Please, somebody help." Kenneth Ritchie, who was the manager's husband, I remember the manager who served them earlier was her husband. He searched and found the body. Agnes then phoned for a doctor and an ambulance. Pauline and Juliet then washed off the blood and both asked for their fathers. Agnes then, she phoned the fathers, but Pauline's father wasn't in the shop, so she left a message. And Agnes phoned Juliet's father, and he said he was going to come down immediately. She then brought Pauline and Juliet hot tea with a lot of sugar. She noted that Pauline gulped down the hot tea with no milk, oblivious to the temperature and apparently in shock. Juliet was noted to be talking rapidly and hysterically. Agnes asked how the accident occurred, and Pauline answered in a slow voice. She slipped on a plank and hit her head on a brick. Her head kept bumping and banging as it fell. Juliet intervened. "Don't think about it. It's only a dream. We'll wake up soon. Let's talk about something else." And after a long lull, Pauline groaned loudly, "My mummy, she's dead." So at 4 p.m, Juliet's dad arrived at the kiosk and he told Agnes Ritchie to tell the police that he was taking both the girls back to his home. And they arrived home at like 4:30, and Juliet's mum bathed them both and treated them for shock, fed them and sent them to bed. At 8 p.m, 2 detectives came to the house, Detective Brown and Detective Sergeant Tate. They arrived at their home. The 2 detectives interviewed Pauline and Juliet. Pauline gave this account of what had happened. She said, "We were walking up the track, having been to the bottom. I was leading and Mother was behind me," which is weird. Because that's not what happened, is it? Because she was like, the plan was that Juliet was ahead, then their mum, then her. So she was saying that her mum was behind. Mother suddenly slipped and fell. She's twisted sideways and hit her head on a rock or something. She seemed to keep tossing up and down and hitting her head. Juliet backed up the story in her interview. And then when Pauline was asked about the bloody stocking found at the crime, she appeared taken aback and she was shocked. And then she said, "We didn't take Mother's stocking off. I was wearing sockettes. I had an old stocking in my bag I used to wipe up the blood." So she was like trying to think of an excuse on the spot why there was a stocking there. But basically, this story really quickly fell apart because Pauline was in shock. So she herself confessed that she killed her mum. I think at this point, when was this? Let me just check my notes. 15, 16? Something like that. But I think they're a bit like they're just completely deluded, you know? Anyway, so she stated, this is what she said. She said she started hitting her mum. As soon as she started hitting her mother, she regretted it, but at that point she couldn't stop. So she immediately knew she had done something wrong.
She's like committed.
But she couldn't stop. Yeah. So basically, they both got arrested. Prior to the trial, Pauline Parker had been known as Pauline Reaper, and her mother, Honora Reaper, had been living with her father, who had the surname Reaper. But during the police investigations, it was revealed that they were not actually married. So they started calling them both Parker instead. So that's why she has like 2 names, and it's a bit weird. It's a bit confusing. So her whole life she was known as Pauline Reaper, but they actually weren't married. So then the police were like, "Oh, well, we can't call you that," which I think is weird. Like, just keep calling her the name that she knows. But they refer to both Honora and Pauline as Parker from then on. The trial was a sensational affair at the time, with speculation about their possible lesbianism and insanity. So, like, this was a massive case, especially in New Zealand at the time. Had so much press going on. The girls were convicted on the 28th of August 1954, and as they were too young to be considered for the death penalty, each spent 5 years in prison. Some sources say that they were released on condition that they never contact each other again, but the Secretary for Justice told journalists there was no such condition. Holmes' release was unconditional, and she immediately rejoined her father in Italy, while Parker was placed on 6 months parole in New Zealand, after which she left the country. So they were only in prison for 5 years
insane.
each. Yeah. Less than 4 months later, the murder was taken as strong evidence of moral decline by the Special Committee of Moral Delinquency in Children and Adolescents. So basically, it became a study point. That whole murder and everything that happened became a study point in New Zealand. It was a big deal. Following her release from prison, Pauline Parker was given a new identity as Hilary Nathan. She spent some time in New Zealand under close surveillance before being allowed to leave for England.
Wow.
Yeah. Beginning in 1997, she was living in a small village of Hoo, near Stroud, Kent, and she was running a children's riding school. So she I think she's still alive. She still lives here. As an adult, she became a devout Roman Catholic. She's never once spoken to the press, but in a 1996 statement released through her sister, she expressed strong remorse for having killed her mother. Her sister further stated that Pauline committed the most terrible crime and spent 40 years repaying it by keeping away from people and doing her own little thing. After it happened, she was very sorry about it. It took her about 5 years to realise what she had done.
Gosh.
So it took her a long time for her to fully comprehend that she had actually done this.
I love that they can both get a visa to leave the country with murder charges on their record.
I know. I can't even do that. God. I can't even go and live in Italy. Bloody hell. After her release from prison, Juliet spent time in England and the United States, later settling in England and becoming a successful historical detective novelist under her new name, Anne Perry. She's been a Mormon since about 1968. Until 1994, it was not well known that Perry was Juliet. But in March 2006, that all got found out in 1994 because there's a film. Peter Jackson released a film called Creatures of Heaven or something like that, and it's about this. It's about this case. And during the press release and the press tour of that, they found out that actually this author, Anne Perry, was Juliet. So they basically outed her.
Wow.
Isn't that terrible? This poor woman who's trying to change her life after doing something as a kid. Yeah. Actually, I don't know. She did murder someone. I don't know how much sympathy I have. I don't know.
That wavered fast.
Yeah. I felt sorry for her that she'd been outed, but at the same time she did kill someone. Anyway, she said in March 2006 that while her relationship with Pauline Parker was obsessive, they were not lesbians. Okay. So yeah, that's the case of Parker and the whole murder case. So it was brutal. And I think very interesting that they both basically live in England.
Interesting about that is how shock broke her. How interesting is that the shock of what had happened during the investigation, their whole plan, I mean, they're only teenagers, I guess, so it's bound to fall apart, but how that just completely broke her, and that was it. She just gives in to everything, and obviously, I get that's a normal thing to happen, I would imagine, but how interesting that, they didn't think of all the details, obviously. I mean, to drop something and to get your mum to look at it, to then bash her in the head, and then say, oh, sorry, her head just kept bouncing off the same rock. What did they think was going to happen? Insane.
No, I think what they were trying to do, I think the place was quite steep. So basically it was this path that I've got a picture. Right. I will put a picture up somewhere. The path is going along horizontally.
So she's
but it's
meant
on
to have
a slope, and it's a carved out path. And there was this wooden bridge which had loose planks. So what they were trying to say was that she stepped on a loose plank and fell
and her
down
head
the
just
hill
kept
that
bouncing
way.
Off stuff.
And that her head kept bouncing. Yeah.
That's dark.
But that's not where they found her. That's the problem. Because they were trying to move her to push her off the like hill so it'd be more realistic, and they couldn't move her.
And they left a sock.
So they tried to change their tune and say, yeah, and they tried to change the tune and say they were walking up the hill. It's not a path.
Crazy.
I don't know. They in shock couldn't like keep their story straight at all.
Oh, that was a good one. I did not know about that case. That was a very, very good one. I enjoyed that.
I thought like it's not very well known considering there's lots of press about it. There's a movie about a Peter Jackson movie as well, like a huge movie. And also Anne Perry is like a well-known author.
My gosh. Do you know what's really weird? So
what?
My Case also has a movie. My Case also has a book.
Oh yeah.
And the start of My Case starts in 1938. Yeah.
Whoa, so that is weird.
Baby love.
I know.
That was so good, Jess. So that was a really good one. That's something I haven't heard about, and brutal. It was really interesting. Thanks. Yeah, that was good.
It's brutal, isn't it?
Right, okay. Let's take a 5-minute break, go get a drink, and 5 minutes for us, but like 2 seconds for listeners. And then I'm gonna come right back and I'm gonna really take you to church. Okay, take a break.
Okay.
We're back.
Hello.
We're back.
Hi.
That was nice. I took a quick drink, and because I've got what is it? Sodium. What is it? Carbonated. Because I got a carbonated drink. I just had the most disgusting burp before we came back. It was so loud. I'm so sorry, Jess.
It was a bit gross. It was gross, and I'm not like that squeamish, but that was gross.
Jess did a really little burp, like, oh, just before we go on, just do a little lady burp, and mine was just really disgusting that burp. Right.
I like the voice you did for me then.
Oh, can I just ask, what was the case you thought I was going to do?
I thought it was going to be Elisa Lam.
Yes. I've got like a load of notes on my computer that I've been like writing like my little thesis on.
Yeah.
And I have an Elisa Lam note, but it's not that case today because I want to get more information on that.
When you said in the break that it was like there was a book about it and a film, and I was like, oh, it can't be that. But when you started talking about it in the beginning, and I like 100% know the case and stuff like that, and like it was something that we did, and I just thought, oh, he's gonna do Elisa Lam. He's gonna do that one.
No, do you know, that's a really good point. I am going to get back onto that case because I do find that case. It's not that I love it, I just find it so fascinating.
Yeah.
But I will come back to it at one point. But today, I am going to be talking about wrestler Dave Schultz and I don't know how to say the word, and his sponsor and, I don't know, co-athletic person, John DuPont. Okay? Mm-hmm. So I just want to let you know that I have been on Wiki, Ranker, YouTube. I watched the Netflix documentary twice. I've taken extracts from the book that were written, and I also read the script for the movie that was made a few years ago.
Okay.
I was going to watch the film, but I didn't want any kind of like dramatization from the film to like influence what I was writing. So I've gone into the script because I was looking for certain things that Mark Schultz said were real.
Yeah.
But this has been really extensive. So, let me get straight into it. John DuPont was born November 22nd, 1938 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He's the heir to the DuPont family riches, the fortune. The DuPont family built their fortune on gunpowder. He grew up in Lister Hall, which was a mansion built in 1922 by his grandfather. His family were very well off. Mm-hmm. They were kind of famous in Philadelphia, and some people noted them as being like the royal family of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Very well off. His family developed the estate for breeding, showing, and racing horses. Unfortunately, his parents divorced when he was 2, leaving his 2 sisters, older brother, and then a younger brother who came from his father's next marriage. Can you hear Elle scratching her post?
I can't hear her, but it looked like the funniest thing I've ever seen. I was dying not to laugh then.
My little egg, I'm so sorry. That was just Elle giving us a little bit of interruption. Anyway, so his parents divorced at the age of 2. He's got 2 sisters, an older brother and a younger brother from his father's next marriage, right?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't get on with his siblings very well because they were much, much older than him, and it was written in an article that his mother paid their chauffeur's son to befriend DuPont.
Oh, wow.
DuPont, this John DuPont, is quite a strange child.
How lonely do you have to be?
Yeah, so his mom paid for him to have a friend.
Sounds like my mum in my childhood.
DuPont went on to graduate university with a Bachelor in Science and Marine Biology.
Nice.
He kind of specialised in zoology as well.
Oh, love.
He was highly respected, as was his family. It was noted that DuPont was injured at the age of 30 when he was thrown from a horse he was riding onto a fence, injuring his testicles.
Ooh.
They became infected and had to be removed and were replaced with prosthetics, which could be a partial reason for his androgynous characteristics later in life.
Okay.
Because of his low testosterone. He was also known to be asexual. He did tell a friend that he would eat meals in his room, alone, fed by the family maid until he was 13 years old.
That's really weird.
Yeah, he had a lot of social problems as a child, which I think were kind of developed by how wealthy the family were.
Yeah.
Didn't have neighbours, didn't really have friends or anything.
Yeah.
DuPont is credited with identifying 24 species of bird when he worked in the Philippines.
That's pretty cool.
And yeah, he also founded a museum of natural history in Delaware. He was very successful in the science field, and he did name 2 birds after himself.
Cool.
He gets married at the age of 45 to 29-year-old Gail Wenck, whom he met after injuring his hand in an auto accident. After living together for around 6 months and only 10 months of marriage, DuPont files for divorce.
Oh.
Wenck sues DuPont for $5 million, claiming that he had pointed a gun at her and attempted to push her into a fireplace.
Wow.
Their divorce was finalised in 1987. At that time, DuPont was worth an estimated $200 million. DuPont claimed later that Wenck was a Russian spy, and that's why he did what he did.
Oh, really weird. Okay.
Right. After his mother passed, DuPont developed the 800-acre farm into a high-quality wrestling facility for amateur wrestlers.
Okay.
The private team was called Team Foxcatcher. If that sounds familiar, it's because a movie and documentary were both made with the Foxcatcher name about this case, both of which I would highly recommend.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting. DuPont established an Olympic swimming and wrestling training centre, and he also sponsored some competitive events at his state. He also invited Olympic champions to live on the ground, including Mark Schultz and his older brother Dave Schultz, who were both competitive wrestlers. DuPont was desperate to get into the athletics field himself, and he started competitive wrestling at the age of 50. He competed in championships around the world. It could be seen as a form of rebellion because his family were actually heavily against the idea of wrestling. They viewed it as a lower class people's sport.
All right, okay.
The idea of the facility was to take the financial barriers away from athletes so that they could focus on the sport and not worry about paying for a house or food or things like that.
Yeah.
The Masters Championship Games, tournament, were held on the estate. It was a tournament for elder wrestlers, DuPont's age, all wrestling at this huge event. DuPont, it should be noted, was very small. He was somewhat gangly, skinny, very awkward looking. He had a hunchback. He wasn't when put next to these other men, he was clearly not very athletic compared to these so this is a quote, other big gorilla-style men that would come and challenge him. No matter the size or comparison between the two, DuPont would win. He could pin these men, flip them, and he would win in these tournaments that were held. Weird. These men were known to be paid off later. It was a sports event, but mostly it was a show to appease DuPont, which was very successful.
Yeah.
It made him really happy. He would get really excited, and so these men were just paid off to kind of lose.
Right, okay.
If you can watch parts of these games, and you can see how kind of somewhat awkward he is and that he's not meant to win. I'm going to put pictures up on Twitter because this one has got so much imagery that it's fascinating.
Yeah, cool.
There was a lawsuit filed in 1988 which shut down a wrestling program because DuPont was accused of making sexual advances towards an assistant coach, Andre Metzger.
Okay.
It should be noted that this fact was later sort of somewhat changed in the movie adaptation, where like Mark Schultz is shown to have some kind of weird homosexual relationship with John, but that wasn't true.
Okay.
That was drawn from this experience where he was sued for making advances. I thought he was
asexual.
He is, but I think he's sort of sexual. Anyone, I don't know. He's having romantic feelings. I think he wants to be part of the group. He's quite a strange man.
Right. Okay.
DuPont's psyche was clearly rapidly fraying, but nobody was in a position to question him. His life growing up really shielded him, and he was like described as a slight rich eccentric. Some irregularities in his behaviour included almost shooting a 12-year-old boy on his property by accident because the fish in his pond weren't biting. And because they weren't biting, he began suspecting the geese by the pond of being like some weird, like sent-in geese. So he's trying to shoot the geese, and while doing so, he almost hit the child.
Wow, okay.
DuPont was apparently friendly with police. He actually, there's an interview with police where media question him, which kind of validate this fact that DuPont had bought bulletproof vests for police and allowed them to train on his personal gun range, and in return he was a police volunteer, police extra, and paid $1 a year.
Yeah, honorary police, to have the title.
Yeah, right. He was paid $1 a year and allowed to drive around with a badge, gun, and use the police car's siren. He was also given a replica car and uniform, which he would later use to write fake citations for speeders by his property.
Oh my god, okay.
So, little strange. He shouldn't really have that kind of power, but it's bought.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Wrestlers say that treadmills were removed from the training facility because DuPont believed the clocks on them were sending him back in time.
Whoa.
Right.
Okay.
He became highly paranoid that people were after him, so much so that he would lock himself away in his room, fearing people were turning against him. He had the columns, walls x-rayed to check for evil spirits and to see if anyone was tunnelling into the house to get him. His paranoia is visible in his interviews. You can really see him.
Yeah.
His money made him very generous, but also it was unclear who his real friends were. He believed Dave Schultz, one of the men that was brought in from the Olympics, was in the walls of his home, and even told friends that Dave Schultz had a weather machine and was controlling the weather.
Okay.
On two concurring days, on two different occasions, he drove luxury cars into the ponds on his property. At one time, he even had a passenger who was a high up in the wrestling community. He drove them both into the pond. The man struggled to escape the vehicle while DuPont just swam out and left.
Oh my god.
DuPont had an Olympic-grade pool, which was overlooked by a mosaic. The mosaic was made from over 1 million small pieces, all imported from Florence. The image depicted DuPont doing all the elements of a pentathlon, the sport he had wanted to participate in when he was younger.
Right.
He is credited with winning a pentathlon, but it's quite obvious that he bought that win in Australia.
Right, okay.
He was seen driving a tank around the property. He also drove said tank to the neighbours' homes. He took videos of the property which he would show athletes and claim weird and odd things occurring on film. He was scared that the deer on the property were actually people dressed up to spy on him. It should be noted that the home he grew up in was actually a replica of a famous estate. The home had weird oddities and secret imagery in the woodwork.
Oh God, okay, that's creepy.
Yeah, so that's a little background on John DuPont. 1959, June 6th, Dave Schultz is born. Dave, nicknamed Pudge as a young child, was bullied because of his weight and also misdiagnosed as having mental disabilities by his teachers when actually he was just dyslexic.
Yeah.
Dave Schultz begins wrestling in junior high and later as a high school senior becomes state champion. That's the same year he also wins his first national title and international wrestling title. He's a big deal,
Yeah,
Dave Schultz.
Yeah, fair enough.
His brother Mark Schultz switched to wrestling from gymnastics, and in his senior year he also won state championship. Both brothers were equally successful. Dave was described as the hippie of wrestling, very friendly, happy, unassuming and mellow. In America, wrestling, he was like the picture boy of wrestling, Dave Schultz,
right,
because he was winning so many titles, Olympic titles and national titles.
Yeah.
But in America, wrestling had somewhat of an age gap, whereas people in Russia were able to continue the sport well into their 40s.
Right, okay.
Whereas in America, you were kind of forced out of the sport to support your family because you wouldn't get many, sponsors.
Yeah.
So, the DuPont complex came at a really good time for these young lads because it was money and a place for them to continue to participate within the sport, go for Olympic titles without the burdens of finances.
Right, yeah.
Dave Schultz would go on to win numerous gold medals in wrestling. He and his brother were the first American brother duo to each win gold medals in the same Olympic year. After a glowing career, Dave Schultz went on to coach, work and live at the Team Foxcatcher complex. He was training for his next Olympic bid and also coached the young amateurs on the grounds.
So is this who Steve Carell plays in the movie?
No, Steve Carell plays John DuPont.
Oh, does he?
And Mark Ruffalo plays Dave Schultz.
Right, okay.
And Channing Tatum plays Mark Schultz.
Right.
So, at first, Dave's brother Mark worked on the complex, but very quickly he left feeling frustrated that he was just a trophy to DuPont. Mark said if you didn't want to be displayed on his wall, he threatened to ruin you. Mark was replaced with Dave after he lost his Olympic trial match. Mark later said, I purposefully threw the match because I didn't want to give DuPont the satisfaction of the win. And Mark leaves.
Yeah.
Dave was known to be lovable, and because of his own dyslexia, he really felt compassion toward the eccentric DuPont. Many of the amateur wrestlers came to work with Dave, not DuPont. He was the face of Foxcatcher, and DuPont was kind of like the wallet.
Right? Yeah.
But Dave is the face.
Yeah, makes sense.
According to a friend, Mike Gostigian, Dave was known to be able to calm and support DuPont, who fell into real mental problems.
Mm-hmm.
DuPont started to complain that Disney characters were hiding on the property, and he could see them. He also complained that the trees would uproot themselves and march around the estate. It should be noted at this time that it is very likely that DuPont was influenced by alcohol and cocaine at the time of these incidents.
Fair enough.
That's where the hallucinations came from.
She's high as fuck.
Dave would outright tell DuPont really clearly these are just hallucinations, they're not real. And that leads DuPont to harbour some kind of resentment towards Dave.
Okay.
He also kind of feared him. The wrestlers were then, at that time, taking shifts to kind of take care of DuPont. Someone would go and sit with him, talk to him, and then someone else would come and you could switch out.
Right, okay.
He was clearly becoming really frail and very needy, according to the athletes.
Yeah.
A Bulgarian wrestler, Valentin, came to the compound. He was doing exceptionally well around the world, and DuPont was awed with Valentin. So much so that he sponsored the Bulgarian wrestling team and would and would start claiming that he was in fact descended from Bulgarian ancestors, which is ludicrous because DuPont is a French family line.
Yeah.
Very famous line. This was a problem because Dave and Valentine were very close. Dave Schultz had previously learned Russian when competing in Russia so as to understand the coaches, and that communication helped Valentine and Dave become really close, and their families very close.
Mm-hmm.
And there are home videos where you can see that it really bothered DuPont. And DuPont is in a car at one point and says, "I'm going to kill all of you," because he starts getting really angry the two are speaking Russian. DuPont then goes on to hire huge security personnel, including FBI, who would follow him. The security would not question DuPont's concerns about people being in his walls or tunnels being there. They'd simply try and prove the contrary. The athlete said that it would have been better if they'd have been really clear with him and told him no.
Mm-hmm.
When his behaviour really spiked, he kicked out 3 African-American wrestlers, one being Kevin Jackson, off the compound, informing them that the place was now a KKK organisation and that no black wrestlers were allowed.
Oh my God.
Kevin Jackson was an Olympic gold medalist at the time he was fired from the team. It was noted that he had an obsession with the colour black, and DuPont was convinced it represented death. After his arrest, he ordered all the buildings on the property be painted black. He also got rid of black horses and black cars. Officials admit that this was a clear sign that something was wrong with DuPont.
Wait, so he got rid of everything black, but then he had the house painted black.
When he's later arrested, he had everything painted black. He gets rid of everything black. Anyone that had a black car, any athlete with a black car had to get rid of it. And like I said, the officials admit that was a really clear sign something was wrong, but, and this is a quote, the benefits somewhat outweighed the risks and that they fell short when sort of measuring it up. So John DuPont was videoed shooting guns randomly into the forest. He'd also claimed bugs were under everything, including his own skin, which he would scratch until it bled. A member and athlete, Dan Chade, of the complex was asked to leave by DuPont, who got so frustrated with the athlete for not leaving immediately that DuPont confronted him in the gym with a machine gun and told him to leave immediately.
Oh my God.
A U-Haul self-moving van was then put outside the athlete's home in a move to push him out. The house next door was also set on fire. It's unclear if John was to blame for the arson or Dan, who was asked to leave. But after the U-Haul was used to move the man's belongings and help Dan move, it was parked near Dave's house. Okay. John DuPont went to Dave's house with a rifle in hand, clearly upset by the van being there, and under the influence of something, got into a confrontation with Dave Schultz. The confrontation ends up with John DuPont in hospital with stitches on his face because he fell and hit his head. But DuPont claimed that actually Dan, the man he'd previously asked to leave at gunpoint, had assaulted him. Police questioned Dave, who reminded them that Dan wasn't even there and that's not what happened, and that John had actually just fallen and hurt himself because he was in a bit of a state.
Yeah.
On January 26th, 1996, at 2 p.m, John DuPont took a .44 Magnum and ordered his security to drive him to Dave's house. Dave called out to DuPont, "Hi boss," his last words, before DuPont pointed the gun at him and screamed, "You got a problem with me," and opened fire, killing Dave on the spot.
Whoa.
The shooting took place in front of Dave's wife, Nancy. The security rushed to check on Dave, and security themselves pulled guns on DuPont, who took off in the car, drove himself back to the mansion where he barricaded himself in. When the 911 operator asked why DuPont had killed Dave, Nancy simply said, "Because he's insane." A 2-day standoff began, with a team of SWAT members strewn across the property. Mr. DuPont was allowed to go to sleep during the standoff. There's actually a phone call where he says, "Okay, I'm going to go to bed. I'll talk to you again tomorrow," to the police. And they allow him to sleep.
Oh my God. What the
hell? With SWAT everywhere. The police were very clearly soft out on DuPont.
Yeah.
During a media interview, the police said that they don't know why he was allowed to stay so comfortably within his house during the time, with the FBI standing around doing nothing.
Yeah.
They turned off his utilities and they tried talking to him to coax him out of the house, but it wasn't until the heat was turned off that DuPont left the house and was arrested. He walked out the garden door wearing black and showing the Bulgarian flag's colours.
Oh my God.
The defence, he was quickly arrested and there was absolutely no question that he had shot Dave.
Yeah.
There was
I mean,
so
there's so
many
many
people
witnesses,
that saw.
yeah.
The defence tried to blame the security guard for milking DuPont of his money and feeding his paranoia until he finally killed Dave. The defence also pled innocent by reason of insanity, which pushes prosecution to prove otherwise. Being found insane would lead to an acquittal and let John walk free. The defence team offered the wrestlers double pay to return to the complex and walk away from the Schultz family. Right?
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah, awful.
Valentin, the Bulgarian, was facing either going back to troubled, war-torn Bulgaria, because at the time it was facing its own troubles, or staying and somewhat walking away from the Schultz.
Yeah.
After pleading insanity, DuPont grew out his beard, grew out his hair, and somewhat purposefully made this show of looking really dishevelled in court. He was wheeled in and out. Right. He starts to get wheeled in and out of court in a wheelchair to kind of perpetuate his plea.
God.
Those attempts failed and he was found guilty. Nancy filed a wrongful death lawsuit and settled with the DuPont estate out of court. It's suspected she won tens of millions from the suit.
Deserved.
Dave's widow, Nancy Schultz, said, long after he was in jail, he had private investigators follow my children to school, send me tapes and let me know that he could reach out, so we had a lot of agony. I have to say, when he passed away, although you never wish for someone's death, it was relief to our family because we finally felt safe again.
I bet.
John DuPont had died in 2010, aged 72, while serving his sentence. He was buried in his red Foxcatcher singlet, which was as a request at his will.
Yeah.
Valentin was named the heir of the DuPont estate.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so he gets
everything. I bet that's getting.
The Schultz get nothing. The Schultz son and daughter spoke of how they were super close families and then suddenly Valentin just never spoke to them again, somewhat kind of walked away from them. The daughter did seem to have some empathy for John DuPont, saying that she wasn't, that like she, in an interview she's saying that she's not happy that people were happy that he died.
Yeah.
Because, you know, people are sad when her dad died and people being happy when this guy dies. I don't think she could put it together.
Yeah.
There are numerous interviews you can watch of him. There's obviously the film, the book, the documentary on Netflix, which is really interesting. Amazing. One of my absolute favourite cases to read through because it's so fascinating. But that is the sad murder of Dave Schultz and the crazy story surrounding Team Foxcatcher and the murderer, John DuPont.
That's really weird because I obviously knew like Foxcatcher because of the film and whatever, but
yeah,
didn't know any of the details, haven't watched it. I don't know.
How insane is that?
I know. I'm gonna
Seeing
go
Disney
watch it
characters
now.
on the estate.
Well, obviously I've seen Bambi, so there was deer there.
I really recommend that you go on Netflix and find the Foxcatcher documentary. It's only an hour and a half long. I recommend to everyone you go watch it because it is fascinating.
I will actually. That sounds good. I love a weird documentary. I love it.
Oh.
Yeah, that was really good.
Thanks.
Also, I do apologise if you could hear like my door opening at one point. But you were on such a roll, I didn't want to like interrupt you. But the other cat, was just meowing outside the door so much.
That's okay.
And I opened the door and he came in and then he left, but he was like stood in the doorway, and I just like pushed him out with the door.
Bless him. That's okay. All the cats and dogs have been really active during this podcast. Elle's sitting behind me, just chilling, looking out the window, so I understand. I hope that case was interesting because
it was.
Although it wasn't that long, it took such a long time to get all that info.
It was really interesting. I really liked that.
I was reading so many different articles about it because when I'd watched the documentary ages ago, I knew of the film, and then I don't know, when I started researching into that case, just more and more crazy shit started coming out, and I
Yeah.
was like, whoa, people need to hear about this. This is so
Weird.
insane.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so
Yeah, I'll
like
put some.
what?
Go on. No, I'm just gonna say I'll definitely put some pictures and of him especially because when he's wrestling as a 50-year-old, he just looks so gangly and awkward. And I'll put that on
I want to
Facebook and
see.
Twitter for people to see.
I
Yeah,
want
it's
to
super
see.
interesting.
That sounds funny. I don't know why I'm like laughing at it. It just sounds funny. Like
No, well, like it was. It's
I
this
shouldn't
guy,
laugh
and
at
I
this like
think he's
absolutely
desperately trying to
insane
join.
man. Yeah, this guy is actually like genuinely clinically insane, and I'm just laughing because I'm just like, oh, look at his gangly body.
And I think the worst thing is that like being clinically insane is one thing, but like taking drugs and
Yeah.
like pushing yourself over the edge like that's then your problem. Like I
Also,
don't believe
buying
you should,
off the police and like other
Oh,
things, so you don't really get like harsh punishment as other people
right.
would. You know, just because you have money doesn't
Yeah, I mean,
excuse
can you
you.
believe he's allowed to stand off with them for 2 days and he's allowed to take, like, he's allowed to fully go to sleep during those times and no one goes in the house and gets him?
That's so weird.
Insane. I mean, trying to be Bulgarian, thinking that the trees are walking around, thinking that Disney characters are around.
I think he's just
Insane.
watching too many films.
Yeah, and snorting too much coke at the same
Yeah,
time, just
exactly.
hallucinating the
He's watching
fact.
like Fantasia and then snorting a line at the same time. And then he's looking outside like, oh, bloody trees are moving. They are.
Yeah, I can't
He's
believe.
like, oh,
Oh,
bloody
that was
hell.
so fun.
There goes Thumper.
That was so fun. That was so nice.
Oh, God, there's
I
Dumbo in the
do.
sky.
Oh my gosh, I wish I saw that. It'd be better
I
than
know.
seeing nothing. I highly recommend people
Highly,
go
highly,
listen to the
highly.
minisodes on Wednesdays.
Highly, highly, highly.
So
You sound
funny.
like you were
Jess
yodeling
did.
then. I loved it.
Jess did a really funny too. Not funny as such, but two cases. Oh dear.
Some weird
And
cases.
yeah, I had a couple of weird cases. So interesting. You should definitely go and listen. It was really, really fun.
Yeah.
Also, please go like our Facebook page. Please go follow our Twitter because I want to hear from people. I want
And
to
we're
know
on
people's
YouTube
stories
as
and what you
well.
want to listen to.
We don't often talk about the YouTube channel, but we're also on YouTube. So if you like struggle to listen on anything else, then listen to us on YouTube. Just put it on the TV while you're cleaning.
Yeah, definitely.
You know?
Oh, that was so fun. I enjoyed that. Getting all that off my chest, all that info. I feel
And it was
relief.
not any case that I ever thought I would hear from you. Ever.
Great. That's
So
good.
that was really cool.
Oh,
Like I
good.
was so shocked when you started talking about like the Foxcatcher case. I was like, what? I was like,
Yeah.
I did not expect that to come out of you at all. That's really cool.
It was so fun. It was so fun.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was
Oh,
good.
Josh,
I think
Josh.
Yeah, go on.
Next time, I'm gonna make this promise in the thing. Next time we're
Okay.
gonna explain the name because I think we've been like promising to
Cool.
explain our name.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
For a while.
The minisode. Catch us in the minisode.
Okay, we'll explain.
Yeah, and we'll give you the brief history of I Bloody Love Orange.
Yeah, we will.
Cool. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for dropping by, Jess. That was so fun.
You're welcome.
That was good. I think we did it. I bloody love orange.
I fucking love green.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.